name is Harrie Weinans. Next to me are
John Larkin
and Christoph Ladel.
Yeah, so I would like to tell something about how the approach consortium started. And for me, it started by the end of 2013, when IMI came up with a research proposal about osteoarthritis. And I was doing research on osteoarthritis, and so I went to one of my colleagues, Floris Lefebvre, and said, okay, should we apply for this? And then there was a proposal from IMI, which already set out basically from the beginning to the end how the proposal should look like. And it turned out that these two persons were from the industry, and they wrote that proposal. So maybe they can explain a little bit why they wanted this and why they wrote it down in a specific way.
Yeah. So yeah, this consortia is a little bit different with the IMI, where the initiation comes from the pharma side, so from the industry side. And so what happens there is that a call goes out. And so actually I was approached by my management at the time, which was, gosh, it was probably 2012, that basically said that they'd like me to go out and see if we can round up interest in starting a consortia from the industry side. So luckily, the following week, as it stood, the ORC meeting was taking place, and so I was able to go there with just a very broad idea in mind, like there's an opportunity to create a consortia in osteoarthritis. And so I first met with Chris, who I knew, who was from Merck at the time. And
well, that was the starting point of the whole thing. So we were sitting together one evening at this ORC meeting and simply thinking how we can do something about what were the ideas. And I must really say, it was from the beginning clear what we want to achieve, where we want to shoot for. And there were already quite good ideas around. So in the next weeks then afterwards, we elaborated more on this and brought up some, mainly John in this case, draft proposal to put this out. And in the whole process, then reaching out to other industry partners at the time and see what we get as a feedback. And well, there were some feedback, but not a lot, I must really also say. Not a lot, but at the final end, we were 3 partners from industry. That was GSK, that was Merck, and that was Servier in this case. So we then formulated the whole proposal and sent it to IMI, and that was the moment Harrie was becoming aware something is happening.
Yes, so then we took it from there, and you start this proposal by making first a pre-proposal. So the pre-proposal is only sort of probably less than 10 pages. And basically you just copy-paste a lot of the stuff that was already written by these industry partners. Basically they explained what they want and why they wanted it, so you repeat it more or less, and then you add substances from scientists that work in this area and can contribute to that. So part of that was my own work and work of my colleagues from the UMC Utrecht. But then, of course, we phoned around and emailed around within Europe other groups that we knew about, that could do research in this area. So we had some ideas how to fulfill the requirements that they put down in that first document. And so then quickly we had a consortium with about 20 partners or so. And so we knew that there was another competing consortium. So we were working hard and trying to do the best we could to submit this sort of, I think it was 8 pages in the end. So we submitted that to IMI, and then you have to wait and see which one of the proposals they choose. And I think that those 2 persons were pretty much involved in the choice of the proposal, so maybe they can tell us more about that.
It was the 3 of us, so the 3 industry partners got the initial proposals on the table, looked through it, and then we discussed what would be the best one of the proposals. And sadly, but it reflects also where we were shooting for, to bring the osteoarthritis to the community in a broader way. But we got only 2 proposals. That's a lucky punch, Harrie, if you want. It's a lucky punch in that it was only 2 proposals that we need to go through. But it's also a little bit reflecting that there's not a lot of things happening, or were not a lot of things happening at the time. Now, years later, it looks completely different. So we are at the end of the consortium, okay, but over the years of the consortium, there has been a lot of dynamics in this case. But the first step was to evaluate which proposal to need.
Yeah, and I think there was even a telephone meeting. So we were interviewed by phone, yeah, and sitting around the table, and then IMI was asking us questions, but these industry partners were on the back, yeah, and whispering to IMI personnel what they should ask us. So, and lucky enough, in the end, they choose us, and I never found out why you choose us. But
you wrote the best grant proposal.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah. No, and it's definitely a long process, multiple steps through different advisory groups. So when we said we assessed the different proposals that came in, actually, we only, as the industry side as a whole, only had one vote. And so we had to come together, but they also brought in an external panel of experts to assess the proposal. So realistically, from the EFPIA side, although we put the call for the grant out in this framework that Harrie and the others built on, we only had one vote, so we didn't really make the decision per se. We had one communal voice in that of probably 15 or so other.
So then basically when we were chosen, yeah, you have to write the real proposal, the real big proposal, and that ended up to be more than 150 pages. So there was a lot of work to do. But what I still like to know from you as an industry is that the big picture of the proposal is basically how to set up a good clinical trial. Which patients do you have to include for a clinical trial, yeah, and how you pick those patients. And of course, that depends on the kind of treatment that they make in industry. So what I would like to know from you guys, are you now happy? Now we have the end results, it's almost done. Yeah. Do you think that this is useful, what we've created? And will it be used in the future by industry when they set up trials?
I very much hope so, and I think it has been useful. I think, obviously, the foundation of all of this, as Harrie mentioned, too, was the realization that clinical trials for osteoarthritis in the past have failed, and what our belief was and what the really fundamental hypothesis was about doing this whole thing was that there are subsets of patients that make up the osteoarthritis arena that will perhaps respond differently to different interventions. And so to try to characterize those groups is really important. And we're really just, the project has now delivered much of the data that we set out to get, and we're just now starting to really see whether there are groups and seeing whether things can get tested.
But during the runtime of the project, Harrie, to give you a feedback also, during the runtime of the project, at least in part, some of the data have been utilized. Some of the data out of the machine learning baseline data that were generated now 2.5 years ago in the first instance. So some of the data have been used at least to get some insight what patient to select for a given clinical trial. Not to the full extent. We still need to dig in the data, although the consortium is coming to an end. But the consortium as an entity is coming to an end, not the people. And I really would like to make this point. We just have had a meeting. It's really coming. The people were coming together. We have the contacts, and we have created a kind of a community where it's very easy to say, oh, I need to have some information. I pick up the phone and call Harrie. Maybe he knows a little bit, or he knows somebody, or somebody else in the consortium knows somebody. So it's really creating this academic industry collaboration in a very open way. And that's one of the first very important outcomes, I think.
One final question for you guys is, okay, how long will it take before we have the first disease-modifying osteoarthritis drug available? I mean, that's in your hands, more or less. We can maybe help you with setting up good trials, doing good science around it, but you have stuff in the pipeline. So you might be able to give that answer.
I think it's always difficult to predict, considering there isn't one, and there's no precedent for it. So, but I think, I think we're looking at, in the next 5-10 years, perhaps, okay. if not less. I can't speak for other companies and other efforts going on, but I think the foundation of what we've generated creates the framework with which to continue to drive hypothesis-driven clinical trials. And if we can tailor those where we think we can define a patient set that would be most responsive to drug X, Y, or Z, that's really useful. It gives us something as opposed to taking all osteoarthritis patients.
Are there
as the same.
potential drugs in the pipeline?
Yes.
I think we have potential drugs, and I would agree with John. I would talk in the time frame 5 to 10 years. That's in part also linked to the long clinical trials in osteoarthritis. So it's not the goodwill or the not goodwill around Harrie, but it's really the long development timelines also.
Okay, I think then let's go and work for that. Make it happen.
All right. Excellent.
Thank you.